A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the tongue of fools pours forth foolishness. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we meditate together and share together from Proverbs chapter 15, verses 1 and 2. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. The book of Proverbs contains many short, pithy sayings, and the idea here is that you don't read large swags at once, but that you take your time to think through just a short saying, a saying that you can then remember and apply when it is appropriate. Proverbs 15:1 is one of those easily remembered principles of how you deal with situations that arise. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Often the way of the world is if somebody says something that you don't like, you raise your voice and try and intimidate them, and that often leads to them raising their voice and trying to outshout you. And so you have a yelling match, which can often lead into violence. But that's not the way that Solomon is suggesting we respond to a situation. I think of the situation that Daniel found himself in. He was a young man, desirous of pleasing God, but he had been taken away from Jerusalem to Babylon, and there with a whole host of other people had been consigned to university because he appeared to be a healthy, bright young man, that he might learn the ways of Babylon. Now in such a situation he could be full of resentment and uncooperative, particularly when he was required to eat food that, as a Jew, he knew was not good for him. The Lord had given guidance to the children of Israel as to food that they should eat, and the Babylonians had no knowledge or interest in God's rules and were eating according to their own traditions. Now, Daniel raised this matter with his supervisor, that they couldn't eat the food of Babylon and drink the wine of Babylon. The supervisor, though, said, "I can't do that for you, because you will endanger my head. The king will come and see that you're not healthy, and he will accuse me of failing to do my task of feeding you properly." Daniel takes this on board, and rather than entering into an argument, he says to the steward feeding them, "Test us for 10 days. Just give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. After 10 days, examine us and act according to what you see." The steward agrees, and after 10 days finds that Daniel and his friends are much healthier in flesh than those who ate the king's provision. And so Daniel was permitted to continue just to eat vegetables and drink water. But having gained the right to eat plain food, Daniel and his friends committed themselves to carefully studying all the material that was given to them, and they excelled far beyond those who indulged in the king's food. For Daniel had a disciplined life, so much so that at the end of the course they were put into the king's service. But then another situation arose. The king had a dream, and it concerned him, it worried him, and he asked his wise men to explain the dream, but refused to tell them what the dream was. And they had no hope. It really was unreasonable, they said, and we would have to agree, that they should tell the king the dream as well as interpret it. But the king was angry with them and demanded that they should all be executed. Their answer stirred up the king's wrath. The general authorities, though, I'm sure, were not very happy with that, and so they began the process at the bottom of the food chain, and went round to Daniel and his friends, the newly appointed Jewish public servants to arrest them, that they might be the first executed. But when they came round, Daniel again gave a soft answer. He inquired, why was the king's command so harsh? What had upset the king? And when he ascertained that it was because of the king's dream and the wise men could not answer it, he asked permission to seek wisdom from his God, and that was granted. And so Daniel went back to his friends, and they prayed to the Lord. And that night the Lord gave Daniel a vision, showing the dream and giving the interpretation. Daniel praised the Lord, and went to the king and explained to him the dream which outlined world history till the end of the ages, anticipating the 4 great kingdoms, the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Greek and the Roman, all ultimately giving way to the kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ, which will indeed fill the whole earth. In consequence of this, Daniel was appointed the senior adviser to King Nebuchadnezzar, and continued to serve the public service for over 70 years. And ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar came to know the God of heaven. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh answer stirs up trouble. Solomon had taught this proverb to his advisers, but when he died, his son Rehoboam took over the throne. The people asked for a softer regime, and Rehoboam asked his father's advisers, and they advised that he give them a soft answer, and that they would remain true to him. But Rehoboam hadn't learnt the lesson from his father. He asked the young men, who said, answer harshly, demand more service. So he did. The people rebelled against him, and the kingdom was divided, 10 of the tribal territories going to his opponent. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. The scriptures have a lot to say about the tongue, and verse 2 of Proverbs 15 says, the tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. The fools will speak things that they do not understand. They will justify themselves, quoting other fools, or denying things that the scriptures declare. The dead do not rise, so Jesus couldn't have risen from the dead. It's not possible for a person to do miracles, so Jesus didn't perform any miracles. In fact, Jesus never lived. There's no record of him, despite all the evidence. If you investigate the record that is there, you find that there is no other reasonable explanation than that Jesus did perform these things, and that he was executed by Pontius Pilate, that he did rise from the dead, and his teaching has changed the whole world and the path of history. It is grown not because of being imposed by powerful men, but because it transformed the lives of ordinary men, of lowly men, men and women who found purpose and direction in life and hope in life, despite very harsh circumstances, men who were prepared to lay down their lives rather than to worship Caesar, offering incense to him. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly. There is a time to speak and to share the information that we have, but there is a wisdom associated with how you do that. And Paul tells us how there were many foolish people who opposed him with all kinds of words, but he attacked their words with logical arguments, thereby declaring the truth and showing their words were foolish. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up trouble. The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness.